Where will Jayson Tatum rank among the best Celtics of all time? Well, that question seems premature, and it may be. Tatum is already building a resume that can compare with any Celtics legend from their greatest dynasties. He tied Larry Bird for the most points in a game in franchise history with 60, joined him as the only Celtics with 50 points and 10 boards in a game, became the third youngest player to score 50 in a playoff game, won a gold medal, and a whole lot more. But ultimately, the answer to the question is going to come down to how many rings Tatum can win while in a Celtics uniform, and whether or not he can be the guy to lead them to their next title. Comparing him to legends like Bird and Russell may seem like a lot of pressure for Tatum, but he's no stranger to playing ball that way. He was the number 3 recruit in a class that included guys like Lonzo Ball, Bam Adebayo, and De'Aaron Fox. And he chose to attend Duke with the year's number 1 recruit, Harry Giles, plus 2 other 5-star recruits in Frank Jackson and Marquez Bolden. Tatum's squad entered the year as the preseason number 1, won the ACC tournament, and then lost in the second round when South Carolina made absolutely everything. Then, come draft time, Danny Ainge made one of the biggest trades in a career full of big trades, giving up the number 1 pick for just the 7th time in league history, only the second within the same conference and the first within the same division. While Markelle Fultz was viewed as a sure star, Ainge gave him up to select Tatum, a move some viewed as another example of Danny Ainge needlessly hoarding assets. But Tatum impressed from the start. Veteran players were quick to note his performances in training camp, but with Hayward, Kyrie, Brown, Horford, Morris, Smart, and Rozier, no one quite knew where he'd fit. While most rookies picked in the top 3 play out their rookie years on teams built to lose, Tatum was immediately playing for a championship while watching Gordon Hayward's leg break during an opening night matchup against LeBron's Cavs. And even though that Celtics team would lose Kyrie as well before the playoffs began, they still went to a Game 7 with that same Cavs team in the Eastern Conference Finals, where Tatum fell just 1 point shy of Kareem's rookie playoff scoring record, and the Tatum and Brown era was established. And all of this happened less than 3 months after Tatum's 20th birthday. Now, doesn't that make you feel old? But it hasn't just been Tatum's individual accomplishments that have made his NBA experience so abnormally pressure-packed. The Celtics have been a one-team drama circus since Tatum arrived. Boston has seen starting caliber players with notable storylines surrounding their departure come and go in droves, including Kyrie, Hayward, Kemba Walker, Al Horford, who's back for round 2, Enes Kanter, who's back for what feels like round 12, and even players like Terry Rozier, Marcus Morris, and Daniel Tice created multi-day stories about Boston's team culture with their departures. And Tatum's arrival came on the heels of the biggest little guy departure of all, Isaiah Thomas's, and the trade that brought Kyrie to Boston in the first place, back when he was still uncontroversial enough to launch an acting career. Sure, some of these wounds were more self-inflicted than others, but the point is that Tatum has been caught up in a whirlwind of NBA drama piled on top of championship expectations from the moment he entered the league, and he's still surpassed our expectations. But on the other hand, for all of Tatum's rising to the occasion, the Celtics have consistently fallen flatter than Kyrie's earth. Other than Tatum's rookie year, when they exceeded lowered expectations after Kyrie and Hayward were hurt, it's hard to call any of their seasons a success except maybe the bubble year. That, along with injuries, possibly poor chemistry, and occasionally poor depth, have made Boston go through a different team build basically every year, which couldn't have helped much. But this season, while expectations may no longer be sky high, the Celtics may finally have a chance to build some continuity. The team is officially Tatum and Brown's now. There are no more big-name veterans that could potentially muck that up. Al Horford's like 80, and Marcus Smart occupies a playmaking, catch-and-shoot, and ball handler's worst nightmare role. And while the depth around their starters isn't always consistent, it is mostly young, cheap, and improving. In many ways, Boston's lining up for their second shot from that rebuild they undertook after trading Pierce and Garnett to Brooklyn, even though that feels like 25 years ago. Their first was when their young wings turned out to be instant impact players, and Isaiah Thomas became a star, and Al Horford and Gordon Hayward decided to sign their free agency. This one is along the more traditional rebuilding path, with their first lottery pick, Smart, in his prime, and their 2 young stars starting to enter theirs. The question is, will it be enough to get Boston their 18th banner? In order for that to be true, we'd probably need to assume that Tatum could be the best player on a title team at some point. And while he seems to be on that path, there are still a lot of questions that need to be answered about both Tatum and the team around him. And lots of them have to do with the potentially massive offensive load that Tatum and Brown could have to shoulder this season. With Kemba Walker now gone, for the first time in years, the Celtics don't have a clear-cut third scorer, and the last time it happened was because they had too many stars on the team. It will most likely be Marcus Smart or Dennis Schroeder, but Josh Richardson is a possibility as well, or even a young player taking an unexpected scoring leap like Peyton Pritchard, Aaron Nesmith, Robert Williams, or Romeo Langford. And if the load the Celtics' young wings carried without Kemba last year is any indication, they'll be doing a lot of the shooting until that other elite finisher is found. And Tatum and Brown won't just have to create points for themselves, but for others as well. While Marcus Smart's a good playmaker, their backup point guards can create shots and their centers are good passers, the ball is going to be in the hands of Tatum and Brown most of the time, and so it will be their responsibility to make sure their teammates are involved. Plus, some of their young bench players like Langford or Nesmith are still coming into their own on the offensive end, and seem to be at the stage in their development where they focus more on finishing the looks they get rather than creating them for others. Boston can get more playmakers in their lineup, but that does mean going small. This isn't a bad thing, but it means that Tatum and Brown are going to have to work harder on the defensive end, because Boston usually does this in bench lineups when just one of them plays and they play at the 4, and that player usually guards the other team's best or second best player depending on whether or not Marcus Smart's in the game. And if you're wondering why we're making such a big deal out of this, it's because whether or not Tatum and Brown can excel, given this huge responsibility, is probably the biggest question that they have to answer to establish themselves as true superstars, ready to lead a team to the finals. Last year, they both showed that they were even more deadly than ever, but all that increased offensive firepower did come with some drawbacks. As the Jays spent so much energy on that end of the court, their defensive metrics slipped pretty dramatically. Both of them, especially Tatum, turned it on when it mattered, and Tatum remains an elite off-ball defender and no one disputes Brown as an on-ball stopper. But it is worth wondering if Boston needs to bring in a third star to balance out the workload on their young wings and help them reach their full potential. Of course, this could all be moot, as one or both could show us yet another leap and end the discussion about bringing in help. But in the era of powerful Big Three-led dynasties, it's hard not to speculate about if or when Boston would bring in someone else or who it might be. And with Robert Williams signed to an extension, a guard would likely be the best fit. Bradley Beal's been tossed around and he's tight with Tatum. Could he be the key that makes that title-contending lock click open like Jrue Holiday was for Milwaukee? Or is there someone else out there who would fit even better, giving Boston that combination of outside shooting, playmaking, and perimeter defense that could send them over the top? Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and let us know what you think in the comments. Can Tatum and Brown dominate? Should Boston bring in a new star not named Bradley? And if so, who is it? Just how high can Tatum go? Thank you again, and do not forget to subscribe.